Not every ear deserves the weight of your truth. Some people listen to understand, others listen to use it against you. I know what it feels like to want to be seen, to want someone, anyone to understand the storms you've survived. We all carry stories that shaped us, broke us, rebuilt us, and sometimes we give those stories away too easily. I hope someone will help us carry them. But listen to me. Your story is sacred. And the world hasn't earned all of it. Today I want to share 7 lessons that taught me when to speak. And when silence becomes your greatest strength. People will clap for many reasons. Some clap because they love you. Some clap because they believe in what you're becoming. But some clap simply because the sound hides their jealousy, their doubt, or their quiet hope that you will fall, so they can say they saw it coming. Life teaches you this the hard way, not in a single moment, but slowly, through the echoes of applause that feel strangely hollow. You start to realize that approval is not affection, and noise is not loyalty, and applause is cheap. It costs nothing to make noise. It costs everything to stand beside someone when the lights go out, when the crowd disappears, when the world gets quiet and the only thing you have left is faith. I learned this truth sitting in rooms where people smiled with their teeth but not with their eyes. Rooms where success felt less like a celebration and more like a test. Who truly wishes you well? Who is secretly comparing your blessings to their own? Who is clapping just to stay close enough to watch your steps, to count your wins and to measure your worth against the insecurities they carry inside themselves? It took me years to understand that intentions are rarely spoken, but they're always felt. Your heart knows when something is off. Your spirit knows when admiration feels heavy, when praise feels sharp, when compliments carry a sting. That is the moment you must listen, not to the words, but to the energy behind them. Because there's a difference between someone who claps for your rise and someone who claps for your mistakes. There's a difference between someone who stands by your side and someone who stands close just to stay relevant. There's a difference between someone who celebrates you and someone who studies you. And the sooner you learn that, the sooner you protect the most vulnerable parts of your journey. There were times I shared my excitement with the wrong people. I handed my dreams into palms that were never meant to hold them. I mistook proximity for loyalty. I mistook familiarity for trust. And then I watched my own hopes become conversations in rooms I was not in. I watched my vulnerabilities become entertainment. I watched my honesty become ammunition. And I asked myself, why does it hurt so much? The answer came quietly, gently, like psalm. A thing whispered from above, because I gave my heart to ears that never deserved it. That was the turning point. I learned to stop explaining my dreams to people who cannot imagine them. I learned to stop announcing my plans to people who don't pray for me. I learned to observe more and speak less, to listen to the tone beneath the words, to trust my instincts more than someone's applause. And in that silence, I learned something powerful. Real supporters don't need to be convinced. Real supporters don't clap the loudest, they stand the longest. Real supporters don't get threatened by your shine, they glow with you. While when you rise, some people will rise with you, others will rise against you. Both reactions reveal who they are. Learn to accept it without heartbreak. Not everyone who enters your life was meant to stay. Not everyone who smiles loves you. Not everyone who acts kind means well. Some people clap because they hope to be near enough to benefit from your success. Others clap because your success reminds them of everything they haven't yet become. And that's not your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to protect your spirit, to guard your dreams, to keep your heart focused on the mission, not the noise around it. Because applause comes and goes, but purpose stays. When you learn to stop needing validation, you become unstoppable. When you learn to walk without permission, you become unshakable. When you learn to trust God's voice over the crowds, you become untouchable. So don't let noise confuse you. Don't let claps fool you. Don't let attention trick you into believing you are safe. Safety is not found in crowds. It is found in discernment. It is found in the quiet knowing of who truly stands for you. And when you know that, when you really know, life becomes clearer. That you walk lighter, you speak softer, you choose smarter, and you rise higher. Not everyone who claps is cheering. Some are calculating, some are comparing, some are waiting. But the ones who clap with genuine love, they are rare, they are precious, they are the ones worth keeping, and sometimes the loudest applause you will ever hear comes from your own heartbeat reminding you that you've survived too much to be fooled again. There comes a moment in every life when you realize your scars are not meant to be worn like jewelry. They are not badges you flash to earn sympathy or approval. They are private chapters, written in a language only you and God can fully understand. And yet, so often, we feel this pressure to explain ourselves, to reveal the deepest parts of our journey just to justify who we've become. We think our pain needs witnesses. We think our story needs validation. We think our scars must be shown in order to be believed. But the truth is simpler, quieter, and infinitely stronger. Your scars are for your growth, not the world's consumption. I learned this lesson the hard way. I once believed that vulnerability meant openness without boundaries, that sharing everything made me real, relatable, honest. But I didn't realize that not every person who listens is ready to honor what they hear. Some people are fascinated by your wounds, not moved by them. Some want access to your weakness, not to support you, but to feel less wounded themselves. And some simply do not have the emotional capacity to hold your truth with clean hands. When you give your raw story to someone who cannot hold it, you don't just lose privacy, you lose a piece of yourself. Illusion.er. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop displaying your scars, you begin discovering their power. You begin to rise from them instead of reaching for approval through them. You begin to understand that what once broke you is now building you. You begin to see that the world doesn't need your wounds. It needs your wisdom. And nothing teaches wisdom like a scar that has been respected, understood, and transformed quietly. So guard your scars with grace. Protect your story with strength. Share only when your heart is ready, your purpose is clear, and your spirit is no longer asking for permission to be whole. You are not defined by the pain you endured. You are defined by the discipline it taught you. And discipline, once earned, becomes a kind of armor. Not hard, not cold, but unbreakable in its clarity. Your scars do not need to be displayed to be real, but they need to be honored to be powerful. There is a moment in life when you realize that your voice is powerful, yes, but your silence is divine. Silence is not emptiness. It is not surrender. It is not weakness. Silence is a sanctuary, a shield, a strategy. It is the quiet room inside your soul where truth sits undisturbed, where clarity forms without interruption, where God speaks in ways the world can't dilute. And yet for so long, I believed I had to respond to every opinion, every accusation, every misunderstanding. I thought explaining myself made me understood. I thought defending myself made me respected. But life has a way of humbling you gently and sometimes brutally until you recognize that not every battle deserves your voice. Some battles are won simply by refusing to engage. But silence teaches you who people truly are. When you stop explaining yourself, watch who remains patient. When you stop justifying your choices, watch who continues to trust your intention. When you stop filling every moment with words, watch who becomes uncomfortable with the quiet. Silence exposes motives faster than any confrontation ever could. Because people with pure hearts are not threatened by your calm. But people who crave drama cannot survive without your reaction. There was a time when I believed being silent meant being passive. I thought staying calm meant losing. I thought not responding meant giving someone else the upper hand. But then I noticed something. Every time I spoke in defense, I felt drained. Every time I justified my truth, I felt smaller. Every time I tried to correct someone's perception, I felt like I was handing over the pen that writes my story. And one day the realization hit me so deeply, it felt like a spiritual awakening. Your voice carries power, but your silence carries authority. Silence gives you distance, and distance gives you perspective. When you step back, you see things you couldn't see up close. You notice patterns in people. You notice intentions disguised as concern. You notice manipulation dressed as love. You notice the difference between those who want to understand you and those who simply want information. Silence is the filter that separates the two .pr, and in that space, in that quiet, something inside you grows, self-respect. You begin to recognize the value of your peace. You begin to understand that not everyone is worthy of your explanation. You begin to trust that you don't need to control someone's narrative about you because truth has a way of surviving without your protection. You begin to realize that the people meant for you will feel your sincerity even in silence. And the people not meant for you will doubt you even when you speak your heart. There were moments when my silence protected me more than my loudest defense ever could. Times when walking away saved me from wounds that words could never have prevented. Times when listening instead of reacting allowed me to see someone's real intention. Times when staying quiet helped me hear my own spirit more clearly than ever before. The world teaches you to speak up, but wisdom teaches you to choose when. And that choice, that discernment, is where your power truly lives. You don't need to respond to every rumor. You don't need to address every slight. You don't need to explain your heart to people committed to misunderstanding it. But you owe yourself peace. You owe yourself dignity. You owe yourself the right to walk away from noise that threatens your inner stillness. Silence is not about shutting down. It is about rising above. It is not about avoiding the truth. It is about protecting it. Some truths grow best in quiet soil, nourished by prayer, strengthened by reflection, guarded by boundaries. And let me tell you something, your silence will intimidate people who expect you to break. It will confuse those who feed on reaction. It will unsettle those who cannot control you any other way. Good. Let silence do its work. Let it speak for you. Let it stand between you and anything that tries to shake your peace. Let it reveal who is aligned with your soul and who is simply passing through your life with noisy intentions. When your heart is at peace, your silence becomes louder than any speech. When your spirit is anchored, your stillness becomes unshakable. When you learn to trust God more than you trust validation, you realize you don't need to win arguments. You need to win your own peace.pr. So choose your battles wisely. Choose your words intentionally. Choose your silence purposefully. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. There comes a point in life when you understand that your story isn't just something you lived through. It is something you earned. Every chapter was purchased with tears, with endurance, with nights where sleep wouldn't come, and mornings where courage felt like a foreign language. And because it was costly, because it shaped you in ways only you and God can fully comprehend, it deserves to be guarded like a treasure, not hidden out of fear, protected out of respect. We live in a world where people share everything. Moments meant to be private become public. Feelings meant to be sacred become content. And stories meant to be held close get scattered in places where they lose their meaning. But not everything you survived is meant to be broadcast. Some things are too precious to be exposed to careless eyes. Some memories deserve gentleness, not interrogation. Some truths need time to mature inside you before they're ready to be spoken. I had to learn this, and it wasn't an easy lesson. There was a time when I believed openness was generosity, that telling people everything meant I was being authentic. But then one day, I watched a story that belonged to me end up twisted in someone else's version of the truth. And it hurt in a way I can't fully describe. It felt like someone had taken a piece of my heart and placed it under a harsh light for everyone to analyze. Not to understand, but to judge. Not to connect, but to compare. And in that moment, I promised myself never to allow my story to be handled recklessly again. Your experiences hold value. Your past carries gold, lessons, perspectives, wisdom, scars that healed into strength. But treasure becomes cheap when left unguarded. Think about it. The most precious gems are kept deep underground, not because they're ashamed to be seen, but because they are too valuable to be exposed without intention. And so is your journey. It deserves intention, it deserves boundaries, it deserves discernment. The world doesn't get to access your story just because it exists. You decide who enters your vault. You decide who is safe enough, steady enough, worthy enough to hear the parts of you that aren't polished or pretty. When you share your story with the wrong people, it feels like betrayal. But when you share it with the right ones, it feels like healing. The difference isn't in the story, it's in the audience. Some people listen to connect, da PR. Some people listen to gossip, bia. Some listen to empathize, da PR. Some listen to weaponize. Your job is to know the difference, da PR. And here's the truth. Your story is not just what happened to you. It is what you made of it. It is how you rose from it. It is the faith that carried you when strength failed. It is the fire that refined you when life tried to break you. It is the prayer that held your spirit when fear tried to drown your voice. That kind of story, that kind of journey is not ordinary. It is holy. It is rare. It is treasure, PR. So protect it with intention. Protect it with prayer. Protect it with the understanding that not everyone is qualified to walk into the chambers of your heart. Some people have sharp hands. Some have C-R-less tongues. Some have fragile loyalty. And treasure cannot survive in the possession of those who do not value what they hold. Sometimes silence protects your story better than explanation. Sometimes distance protects your peace better than forgiveness. Sometimes privacy protects your spirit better than vulnerability. This isn't about building walls, it's about building gates. Gates that open with wisdom, not impulse. Gates that open for compassion, not curiosity. Gates that invite people who bring presence, not pressure. People who won't take your story and run with it, but sit with it, honor it, and guard it as if it were their own. And here's the part many forget. Your story is still unfolding. You are still becoming. You are still healing, learning, shedding, rising. Not every chapter is ready to be told. Some are still being written. Some need silence before they can be shared. Some need prayer before they can be understood. And some will only make sense years from now when you look back and say, now I see why. But honor your story by choosing when to speak it. But honor your growth by choosing who deserves to hear it. Honor your journey by remembering that treasure is always protected. BR not to keep people out, but to keep your value intact. There is a quiet truth you only learn after your heart has been mishandled a few times. Not everyone has the emotional maturity to hold your honesty with care. Some people hear your truth through the echo of their own wounds. Some take your vulnerability and bend it into shapes that fit their insecurity. Some don't listen to understand. They listen to compare, to compete, to twist. And when you hand your heart to someone who hasn't healed, you're not giving them information. You're giving them power they don't know how to carry. I learned this after trusting people who were still bleeding inside. They didn't mean harm, not always, but a person who hasn't faced their own pain will struggle to sit with yours. They will downplay your hurt because they haven't acknowledged theirs. They will minimize your experiences because acknowledging your strength forces them to confront their weakness. They will turn your confession into a mirror and then blame you for what they see in their own reflection. You walk away wondering why your truth felt twisted, why your openness felt punished, why your honesty left you feeling smaller instead of lighter. But the truth is simple. People can only meet you at the level of their healing. Imagine opening your heart like a soft book, handing over chapters you rarely show anyone. You expect compassion, but instead you find criticism. You expect understanding, but instead you find discomfort. You expect connection, but instead you find judgment disguised as advice. And you start to think something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. You just chose someone who hasn't learned how to sit with themselves, let alone with you. People who haven't healed often see your vulnerability as an opportunity, not to love you, but to feel superior. They use your honesty to soothe their own ego, to remind themselves they're not the only one who's broken. They hold your truth with shaky hands, not because they want to drop it, but because they never learned how to hold anything fragile without breaking it. And you end up feeling like your sincerity was a mistake. .br. But here's what life taught me. Your honesty is not the problem. Your audience was. You must be careful who you hand your truth to. Some people will hear your story and feel inspired. Others will hear your story and feel threatened. Some will hold your truth like a gift. Others will hold it like ammunition. And it has nothing to do with your worth. It has everything to do with their wounds. Unhealed people get intimidated by growth because it reminds them of the work they haven't done. Unhealed people reject accountability because blame feels easier. Unhealed people misinterpret love because they've never experienced stability. Unhealed people twist your sincerity because they struggle to face their own reflection. Dr. And your job is not to heal them. Your job is not to save them. Your job is not to shrink yourself so they feel comfortable around your courage. Your job is to recognize the signs. To sense when someone's heart is still a battlefield. To understand that some people can only offer chaos because peace has never lived inside them. To see that your honesty cannot be safe in a place where their insecurity is louder than their compassion. You must learn to ask yourself, but does this person have room for my truth? But do they listen to connect or to collect? Do they honor my heart or do they feed their ego with it? But do they want to understand me or do they want to analyze me? Because when someone hasn't healed, they don't respond to your honesty with empathy. They respond with projection. They don't hear what you're saying. They hear their fears speaking through your words. And that is why your truth falls into unreliable hands. But here's the miracle in all this. When you finally meet someone who has done their inner work, you feel the difference instantly. They listen without rushing to speak. They hold your words without twisting them. They don't compare wounds, they honor them. They don't judge your past, they respect your growth. They don't fear your vulnerability, they meet it with their own. And that's when you realize, it was never that you shared too much. It was that you shared with someone who wasn't ready. So protect your truth, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Your honesty is a gift, not a tool. Give it only to those who can hold it gently. Only to those who have healed enough to handle what is real. Only to those who respond with softness instead of suspicion. Your honesty deserves healed hands. Your story deserves steady hearts. And you deserve people who honor the truth you fought so hard to find. There comes a time when you finally understand that the people you choose to open your heart to will either lift you higher or drain you quietly. Every soul you invite into your emotional space will do one of two things. They will add to your courage or they will add to your doubt. They will multiply your strength or they will multiply your fear. And you can feel the difference instantly, even if your mind tries to ignore it. There are people who listen to your dreams and make them feel bigger. Their eyes light up, their energy rises, they speak life into your vision. They remind you that what you want is possible, that what you're reaching for is worthy, that your purpose is real. Being around them feels like sunlight, warm, expansive, comforting. These are the people who don't just hear your story, they nourish it. They don't just support you, they stand with you. They don't just believe in your dream, they help you believe in yourself on the days you forget how powerful you are. And then there are the others. The ones who hear your dreams and immediately shrink them, question them, poke holes in them. The ones who use fear as a language, who mistake caution for wisdom, who wrap their insecurities in sentences that sound protective but are actually limiting. These are the people who respond to your ideas with silence or doubt or a subtle sigh that tells you they've never stepped beyond the borders of their own comfort. They aren't bad people. Me, all the reasons it would be difficult, all the obstacles, all the risks, and I felt something inside me shrink. Not because the dream was impossible, but because I had handed it to someone who didn't have the capacity to see what I saw. In that moment, I realized something life-changing. You cannot share a giant dream with someone who thinks small. You cannot share a sacred vision with someone who has never stepped beyond their own fear. You cannot expect hope from someone who hasn't learned how to hope for themselves. Br. And that's when I started choosing differently. Now, I share only with people who speak life, not limitations. People who love from abundance, not insecurity. People who find reasons why things can happen, not reasons why they won't. People who show up with courage even when fear whispers in their ear. People who pray for you. People who root for you. People who want to see you win because your win doesn't threaten them. It inspires them. When you surround yourself with people who multiply your strength, life feels lighter. Your goals feel possible. Your confidence grows. Your spirit breathes. You begin to move differently, not because the path is easier, but because your company is better. And here's the beautiful truth. You don't need many. Even one person who believes in you with sincerity is more powerful than a crowd that doubts you with soft voices and polite smiles. One aligned soul can shift your entire reality. So choose carefully, choose wisely, choose intentionally. Share your dreams with people who ignite your courage. Share your fears with people who can hold them gently. Share your victories with people who celebrate without envy. Share your heart with people who multiply your strength. Br, not your fear. There is a sacred order to your life, a rhythm, a divine choreography. And when you understand that your story was never meant to be handed to the world before it has been handed to you, something inside you settles, something inside you strengthens, something inside you finally breathes. But your story is yours first. It belongs to your heart before it belongs to anyone else's curiosity. It belongs to your understanding before it belongs to anyone's interpretation. It belongs to your healing before it belongs to anyone's opinion. And too often, we rush to share chapters that aren't even finished. We speak about wounds that haven't closed. We reveal battles we're still fighting. We tell the world things we haven't told ourselves with honesty. And in doing so, we hand over a story that isn't ready to be held. There were seasons in my life when I spoke too soon, when I tried to explain what I was going through while I was still in the middle of it, when I tried to make sense to others while I myself was confused. And every time I did that, I felt more lost. Not because I was wrong, but because I was speaking from a place that had not yet found clarity. A storm cannot teach you its lessons while you're still inside it. You learn after the clouds part, after the silence returns, after the dust settles enough for you to see why things happened the way they did. Your story belongs to you first so you can learn from it, so you can sit with it, so you can hear what God was trying to whisper through every moment that broke you, stretched you, transformed you. When you keep your story close, you begin to understand it with gentleness instead of urgency. You begin to see patterns, blessings, redirections that didn't make sense before. You begin to see yourself more clearly, not as someone who suffered, but as someone who survived. And then, once your heart has held your story, you hand it to God, not because He doesn't know it already, but because surrender brings revelation, because prayer brings clarity, because letting go brings meaning to the things that once felt meaningless. When you give your story to God, it's no longer just a sequence of events. It becomes purpose. It becomes preparation. It becomes a path that leads you somewhere higher, even if you didn't realize it at the time. I've had moments where I didn't understand why something happened, why something ended, why someone left, why life felt heavy. But when I placed those moments in God's hands, suddenly they didn't feel like mistakes anymore. They felt intentional. They felt necessary. They felt like a sculpting, painful but purposeful. That is why your story must pass through your faith before it passes through your mouth. Because faith transforms pain into wisdom. It softens the edges. It reveals the lesson. It shows you how far you've come. And only after you have held your story, Br and God has shaped your story, Br should the world ever hear it. When you speak too early, you speak from an open wound. When you speak too late, you speak from fear. But when you speak from healing, you speak with authority. with peace.bar, with grace.bar, with truth that doesn't tremble anymore. The world is not entitled to the unedited version of your journey. You don't owe anyone the raw chapters, the messy pages, the nights you cried, the moments you broke. Those belong to you and the one who carried you through them. What the world gets, if you choose to give it, is the wisdom, the clarity, the strength, the light that was shaped from the shadows. Your story becomes powerful when it is spoken from a place of victory rather than vulnerability, not because vulnerability is weak, but because healed vulnerability is transformative. When you speak after you've healed, your story no longer asks for sympathy, it delivers strength. It no longer seeks validation, it offers guidance. It no longer reveals wounds, it reveals resilience. And let me tell you something beautiful. But the world needs your story, but it needs the led version, not the hurting one. It needs the lessons, not the chaos. It needs the rise, not just the fall. It needs the wisdom, not the wound. So take your time, Batpa. Hold your story close until it stops shaking. Place it in God's hands until it stops hurting. Bar. And when you are ready, when the moment feels aligned, speak it with the confidence of someone who knows they survived for a reason. Bar, your story does not define you. Your healing does. And when you share from a healed place, your story becomes a light for someone still searching for their own. In the end, your life is not shaped by who doubted you, but by who guided you. Not by the noise around you, but by the voice within you. Not by the fear that tried to stop you, but by the faith that carried you anyway. Bar, you are not here by accident. You are not breathing by coincidence. That bears a purpose stitched into your soul, a calling written into your name, a strength placed in you long before the world ever tried to weaken it. Zarpala, so walk forward with courage. Walk forward with clarity. Bar, walk forward knowing that what is meant for you cannot be taken, twisted, or withheld. And remember this truth. Bar, when you trust God with your story, He turns every chapter into direction, every struggle into preparation, and every setback into a doorway you were always meant to walk through. You don't need permission to rise, but you don't need approval to shine. Bar, you don't need validation to begin again. Stand tall in who you are. Bar, speak only when your heart is ready. Bar, share only what your spirit has healed. And live like someone who knows that grace, not doubt, has the final word over your life. Because the world doesn't get to decide your destiny. Bar, faith does.